growing your own mushrooms and consuming them, in my opinion, is a completely different experience than getting them from a friend, from a friend, from a friend.
Welcome to the Trip Sitting Podcast, where we explore what it means to be human. I am your host, Cam Leeds, and today we are joined by none other than Jacob from Oklahoma Fungi. This man is absolutely killing it out there, educating people on medicinal mushrooms, functional mushrooms, teaching people how to grow their own, hosting dope events, and he's really somebody that you should know if you don't. So you're going to really enjoy listening to this one where we talk about life and mushrooms. This episode is sponsored by Wisdom Peak Healing Collective. Now, Wisdom Peak is a new sponsor of mine, and they're actually somebody that I've worked with in the past, and I've actually developed a pretty personal relationship with them. They're based in the Denver area, and they are a healing community that has a ton of amazing different mushroom products and other types of products as well, in order to help you on your healing journey. And not only that, but they have an amazing community that you can be part of, where they actually host community events in person. So if you're in the local Denver area, be sure to check those out. But also they've got an amazing Signal chat that can just help you with whatever you're going through, and people are there to support you. And it's really just an amazing resource. So check out Wisdom Peak Healing Collective. Info on how to join the community is going to be in the footnotes of this podcast. Now, make sure that you are following and subscribe to Trip Sitting Podcast wherever you're getting this on, as well as social media. And I think that's all I'm going to bombard you with today. So here is this week's episode. You are in San Diego at the moment, correct? Fresh off of Entheogen Expo, which happened literally yesterday.
2 days ago now. So yesterday I was at the San Diego Fungus Fair, and the day before I was at Entheogen Expo.
What is the San Diego Fungus Fair? I didn't even hear about that one.
Yeah, so the San Diego Fungus Fair is the annual mushroom event for the San Diego Mycological Society, which I'm very proud to say I am now a member of.
Nice. So what sets that apart from Entheogen Expo?
Yeah, so I would say that the San Diego Fungus Fair was oriented more towards the academic and family setting. So I actually have some reels and some content that I'll be coming out with on my Instagram, YouTube if I ever get it back, and Patreon. But I actually go to a lot of these events to showcase what people are missing out on if they can't go and travel. And so I would say that Entheogen Expo, it was incredible, but it was definitely geared towards a lot of the online mushroom community. So I got to see a lot of friends that I hadn't met before. Whereas at the Fungus Fair, there was a lot more academic speakers. And so there's kind of these two different sides of the same community, and everyone was happy together. And I saw many people at Entheogen Expo that I did see at the San Diego Fungus Fair. So there's definitely a lot of overlap. But I would say at the Entheogen Expo, there was more kind of that psychedelic interest, whereas at the Fungus Fair, there was more of the academic research interest in mycology.
Okay, no, that definitely makes sense. What was your favorite part of Entheogen Expo?
I would say my favorite part was actually, this was my first time coming to San Diego, and I had always heard about the people, the culture, the lifestyle, and coming to this event to me felt like a welcome to California. My friends Agar Boy and Miss Mush Labs and Panacea Sending, they put together an incredible lineup of speakers. We had Alan Rockefeller, Basidium Equilibrium, Crime Pays, Botany Doesn't, and I was very lucky to be a speaker myself. So I think that Entheogen Expo put a really great lineup of speakers from people that a lot of the mushroom community looks up to, especially in the Entheogen community, the broader community. I think there was a lot of great people that we actually got to interact with in person. So that was one of the best things that I got from Entheogen Expo, is getting to meet people, talk with people, trade stickers, give them some of the Oklahoma wild genetics that I collected 2 years ago and getting to trade with what they have from their lab. So it was truly epic, and I can't wait to go back next year.
Nice. So last year too, you also had the very first Oklahoma Mushroom Festival. I'm curious, when you were thinking that up and dreaming what you wanted it to be, were there any previous events that you had been to that you were kind of modeling it afterwards?
Yeah, so my event was in October of 2023, and I had actually gone to a mushroom event, festival, or education class out of state or in state every month leading up to that for the year. So I had been to almost 10 different mushroom festivals or events by the time I had hosted my own. So my intention at the beginning of the year was to go out and to learn from people, to not just be an attendee, but to be a speaker. So that way I could experience what it was like to be in a speaker at an event. And when I invited speakers to my own, how I could pamper them, how I could make it a more enjoyable experience for everyone. So by being an attendee, by being a speaker, by even being a sponsor and donor to some events, I was able to kind of learn the ins and outs of how people want to be treated, how people want to be received, and especially when people come to events from out of state, what they're looking to see. And I'm really grateful that we had such a positive response. We had 1,767 tickets sold. So it was a
Holy
number that I
shit,
was
man.
never, yeah, it was a number I was never expecting to hit. I told my top sponsor, Inoculate the World and Pacific Substrates, those are my two top sponsors. I told them both that I was expecting anywhere from 300 to 500 people.
Ha!
And so when we had, 1,700 people show up, everyone was ecstatic. There was hardly any space moving room inside the building, and all four of our food vendors sold out within 3 hours of opening at the event. So
Damn.
everyone left home super happy. A lot of
Except
vendors
for
were
the
very
people that didn't
happy,
get food.
or the people that didn't come really. And so, one of the cool things was that a lot of our vendors were giving out free stuff. And so
Mhm.
Inoculate the World came with 1,400 spore syringes that they gave out during the event. And if you've bought spores before and you're listening to this, you know how much spores can be. So
Damn.
for a vendor to come out to an event they've never been to in Oklahoma before, it's the first time, and to really show our state and our local community love, it was truly a blessing. And I really appreciate everyone who came from out of state because they made a massive effort to come to Oklahoma and see what our community's like. And I'm just so grateful to the local community that they really showed out and that vendors were getting to interact with people of all different ages and demographics. It was a family friendly event. So we had kids running around going from our immersive experience room to the kids station. And it was just such a great environment and community. It was a really great blend of Entheogen Expo and the San Diego Fungus Fair.
Nice, man. So, it sounds like community is, especially in Oklahoma, is something that you're very, very passionate about. How long ago did you start Oklahoma Fungi?
Yeah, so I registered for the LLC on August 10th of 2020. And
That's
that was when I
insane that you
first,
know that.
well,
I have
I,
no idea the date that I got Trip Sitting LLC. Like, not a single.
well,
I know it's sometime in February.
Well, the unfortunate reason I know that is because 2 days before that I was laid off. So that
Oh
was
shit. Okay.
an important time period for me where I was working for an analytical lab testing soil, water, petrochemicals, medical cannabis, hemp products. And the company that I was working for ended up closing down. And I was looking for something to, one, either begin my entrepreneurial journey or go and start working in the mushroom community out of state. And this is actually the first time that I've mentioned this on the podcast because it just kind of evaded my memory for some time until my wife and I were talking about it. But in between the day that I had actually, like the weekend that I had started my company and getting laid off, I'd actually applied for a job at Fungi Perfecti,
Oh
Paul
no
Stamets
shit.
company out in
Yeah.
Washington. And I just applied as a basic beginner level job. And I had told she was my wife now, but she was my girlfriend at the time. I'd said, I think I'm going to move to Washington because mushrooms are something I really want to pursue. And I just don't see the community here in Oklahoma. I just don't see how it'd be possible. And unfortunately, I ended up getting a rejection letter quite sooner than I expected. It just ended up being like that next week. And so, I had submitted my resume, I thought that I was qualified for the position,
Hmm.
but I guess because I didn't have any prior mushroom cultivation experience outside of some of the gray area market, then there wasn't much to stand on in their and maybe in their opinion. So from that a rejection from Fungi Perfecti, looking for occupation, I decided to start Oklahoma Fungi and stay in Oklahoma and see what I could make work.
Okay. This is really random. I noticed right there within that sentence, you pronounced fungi and fungi, like both of them. You use both pronunciations. Is there a
Mhm.
correct one?
So as like someone who's been doing education for so long, and I say for so long, there's people who've been doing it for much longer. But I've done now over 100 education classes. So since I started Oklahoma in 2020, I started doing education classes 3 times a month. And so what I felt like been doing it for a while. And so what I've learned a lot is that everyone learns differently.
Mhm,
Everyone hears things and learns things from YouTube or forums. And the best thing that I can do as an educator is to try and hit all those different pinpoints.
mhm.
So when someone online says you have to say it like this or you have to say it like this, I've heard from Jay Justice and a lot of the academics, no one speaks Latin now. So don't worry about how you're pronouncing it.
Yeah.
And so for these larger academics who are writing, the North American Amanita Guide, people who are really high up in academia, if they're telling me not to worry about pronouncing these Latin names, the last thing I'm ever going to do at my education classes is ask someone, do you know the Latin name and how do you pronounce it?
Yeah.
And so for me, what I always try and do is just make myself the most approachable person for all different ages and demographics. I never want to talk over anyone. I never want to make anyone feel like I'm dumbing it down all the way, but I want to make people feel engaged and I want to make sure that people feel like I'm not the guy who's ever going to say it this way or the highway. There's an
Mhm.
infinite amount of ways to do things, and I just want to be a supporter of that.
Gotcha. So going back to the community aspect of Oklahoma
Mhm.
Fungi, you said specifically that you wanted to move to Washington because you didn't think that there was that community in Oklahoma, and yet here you are. I mean, essentially being the trailblazer for that community. But I'm curious, like, what did that community actually look like back then? Like, was there truly nobody,
Mhm.
or was it just like so unbelievably small that like it wasn't really much of a community? Versus, what does it actually look like now?
So I would say that it before the majority of the mushroom community was surrounded around the culinary aspect. So there was two mushroom farms that were well known. One of them was a smaller gourmet mushroom farm that actually shut down in 2018, 2019. Or, yeah, 2018 actually. It was before COVID was even on the map, and they were supplying culinary mushrooms. And at the time, I wasn't growing culinary varieties, but I was interested in foraging and I was interested in other active mushrooms. And so while I hadn't been growing gourmets, I knew that there were people around. There weren't a lot of people leading free foraging events or actually teaching you how to grow these gourmet mushrooms. There was just a guy who was selling them to the restaurants or selling them at the farmer's market. And then on the other hand, we have one of the largest mushroom cultivation facilities in the Midwest in Oklahoma. It's called J&M Farms, and they produce 28 million pounds of button mushrooms every year. And
Damn.
I had an incredible opportunity to go and tour their farm to learn more about their operation. And it's very, very cool. And one of the things that I learned was that they're very tight kept with their community up there. So they don't do a lot of outreach outside of the employees. So they take very good care of their employees with community events, but they're not actually teaching people how to grow mushrooms on the level that you typically see like a mycology society.
Mhm.
And so getting on to that, Oklahoma has actually not had a mycology society until 2019. Until like it was like late 2019, 2020, I believe that they actually picked it up off the ground. And so it was actually COVID that kind of instigated a lot of these mushroom companies, including myself, to get started. And as I've traveled around the United States, I've met numerous people and businesses that have started during that 2019, 2020 time period. And
Okay.
so at that time, I know, a small company growing gourmet mushrooms and a large company producing a lot of mushrooms that were buttons. And so, aside from that, I knew looking from out of state as I was following people online, what was the majority of the market was mushroom spores and mushroom products for substrates, like substrates and grains and agar. And so I decided that if I was going to try and make a position for myself in Oklahoma, that instead of trying to grow the gourmet mushrooms, I would actually teach about how to grow them. And then I would even sell the supplies to do that. So if people would be interested in learning, if they were even interested and had the budget to buy the supplies, they could come to my class and learn for free, and then all they'd have to buy is the supplies. And so even until this day, my classes are still free. I do offer paid workshops, but every month of last year and the year before, I was offering free classes. And that's to really get engaged with the local community in Oklahoma. And so comparatively, our state has one of the lower education percentages across the United States. And so having to break down a lot of these negative stigmas about the way mushrooms are perceived, whether it's through psychedelic or poisonous, or even just poorly tasting mushrooms because most people haven't had them properly prepared. And so getting to break down these stigmas by working at the farmers market and doing these education classes is how I was really able to build community. And it was from selling those supplies that I was able to make a career out of mushrooms. And still, like today, while I'm here in San Diego, I'm so blessed that my family and my sisters are able to help fulfill orders. So as people are ordering things online, my sisters are able to pack the stickers and orders and send them out away to everyone who's ordering.
Nice. So let's back up a little bit. When did your love of mushrooms like actually start?
So I did not grow up foraging. I did not grow up eating mushrooms other than if they came on the pizza. I grew up in a very conservative Catholic family, so the only mushrooms that we had heard of were really the poisonous ones. We didn't even know about the psychedelics. My parents had never talked about psychedelic mushrooms, and they had never even talked about cannabis. So I had gone to Catholic school from pre-K through 12, so being from like 4 years old all the way until basically 18. And
Hmm.
so when I got to college is when I basically discovered cannabis, mushrooms, in a whole new world. And so it was quite the bubble to be burst that I was living in. And so as I got more into cannabis, I got a job working for a CBD company in Oklahoma, and they were making CBD water, CBD tinctures, and all these other products. And it was through that same job and through that community that I had also learned about mushrooms. It was though they didn't actually know anything about them. They just had the mushrooms and they could get the mushrooms. And
Okay.
so
Are we talking
for
specifically now about psychedelic mushrooms?
yes, referencing
Okay.
actives now. So
Okay.
my journey into mushrooms really began with the actives, and that was through friends of friends. But my curiosity, my science background, I was really curious in where these things were coming from and how they were growing. And so one day I came home from class. My brother was sitting on the couch. He said, "Hey, check out this video I found." And it was Willie Myco on the screen. So since then, and that was in 2017, we were actually writing down notes and writing down everything he was doing because we knew it was common for his videos to be taken down.
Hmm.
And I even remember to this day watching Willie Myco videos on an account that was screen recording his videos and re-uploading them. And so, I was with my brother writing down these notes so that way if those videos ever got taken down, we could still go back and learn how to grow. And so that was back when PF Tech was the talk and the norm. So PF Tech, for all those who aren't listening, I hope you never try it. I hope you go straight to bulk and spawn and grain. But majority of people who started in the early 2000s, even way before that in the 70s, 80s, 90s, a lot of cultivation was done in mason jars, not just
Hmm.
because it was reusable, because they could sterilize it and keep it in a sealed container. And so this is how I learned how to grow. And it is not the most efficient way. It's quite tedious and hands-on, and the overall yield is quite low in my opinion. But it was through this journey of learning through YouTube videos and taking notes and experimenting with my brother that we had learned how to grow mushrooms and then actually consume the mushrooms. And growing your own mushrooms and consuming them, in my opinion, is a completely different experience than getting them from a friend, from a friend, from a friend. And that is
Hmm.
because you've actually put love and passion and time into them. And when you do consume them, it's that much more love coming back to you.
Yeah.
And so through these experiences is what really drove my curiosity. And so from 2017 to 2019 and even into 2020, I was very curious about mushrooms. My experiences on them had made me fall more in love with nature and being outside. My entire life I'd been playing sports, doing everything I could to be outside, but I was never looking at mushrooms or plants or insects even. But it wasn't until my experiences on mushrooms did I really start to have more passion for plants. And then that passion even expanded to insects. And so William Padilla Brown talks about this a lot, how fungi are the hooked on phonics of ecological literacy. And for me, that's exactly that statement, underlined in bold, because I wasn't looking at insects and plants the way I was until not just before being on mushrooms, but until after the experiences when you start to put these patterns together and think about how mushrooms are interacting and helping all these different organisms and how you as a human can also interact and help and benefit all these different organisms.
It's interesting. Um, I'm gonna take sort of a different turn here. So, how does
Mhm.
it feel to talking about Willie Myco and taking the notes because his videos were all taken down? How does it feel to now be in on the same ranks as Willie Myco?
Yeah, this is something that I always tried my hardest to not happen, right? I mean, as being someone in Oklahoma where the medical cannabis scene, it wasn't legal for a long time, and no one thought cannabis would be legal in Oklahoma for a while. And in 2018, it became legal, so it kind of loosened up. And that's when I saw this emerging market come for mushrooms. And when I lost my job, I decided to get a head start in 2020. And when I started, I knew that because of where I lived, one, I needed to protect myself. And if I was going to be a public face, then I also couldn't be a psychedelic public face, if that makes sense. So
Hmm.
I used Willie Myco and I became a patron to learn more about his videos and to actually get to communicate with him one on one and ask him, how can I be the safest for the videos that I'm trying to do? And of course, he's not a lawyer, but at the same time, with his history and experience in working with online content, he was kind of able to help guide me on what I should and what I shouldn't do. And
Hmm.
so for the long time, I never posted anything about psychedelics on my Instagram. And I started posting more about my psychedelic advocacy when we had a psilocybin research bill come in Oklahoma. So I started making YouTube videos about being up at the Capitol. I actually did interviews with the senators who were submitting and fronting the bill.
Hmm.
And all through that time, my account had no issues at all. And so it wasn't until 11 days ago now that the YouTube email, the team YouTube sent me an email saying that my account was taken down and that I could appeal. And so it was really surprising to me because I had never received a strike. I had never received a violation and none of my videos had ever been taken down before.
Hmm.
And so it was really out of the blue. And like I said earlier, I had tried my best to always portray myself as a family friendly, to make sure that that line was very clear, that everything I did was legal. And so to wake up one day without any strikes or violations, it definitely sucked. I had over 140 videos on there that I don't have saved anywhere else. And so I
Damn.
have some of them. I have some of them, but like some of my videos from back in 2020 and 2021 that are super old and like, not everything I said was correct because I'm still learning and I still am today. And, but if people wanted to go and back and see my journey where I started, or like my parents wanted to go and see it, it was on there. And so
Hmm.
that definitely sucked because I definitely should have had a backup copy of those. But my goal is that, by being on YouTube, I was the most accessible platform for everyone. I was able to reach the broadest audience of people watching. And so even though YouTube was taken down, I still tried to appeal. And the appeal 2 days later was sent back and declined, saying that my account would not be reinstated. And so yesterday I posted that my account wasn't going to be re-uploaded. I received a lot of love from the community, people telling me that they appreciate the videos, people telling me to keep going. And so I actually even had a comment from Andrew from Mossy Creek Mushrooms. He told me to reach out to Team YouTube on X, formerly Twitter, and that there's sometimes human to human interaction on that platform. Whereas on YouTube, everything is AI algorithm taken care of.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so,
like there's probably not a single human that looked at your account before it got taken down, and probably not a single human that looked at the appeal afterwards.
exactly. And that's one of the things that he had mentioned because he's had videos taken down in the past. And so one of the things that's unique about my situation is I had never had any videos taken down and I had never had any strikes or violations. And
Yeah,
so,
that's crazy to me that after not having a single video taken down or strikes a violation, they take down your entire account. Like, what has to happen? Like, what has
yes.
to go on in order for that to happen? Who the fuck is after you?
Well, I'll tell you, this is where it gets interesting because after taking that information from Andrew from Mossy Creek, I reached out to them on Twitter and they ended up responding to me about 2.5 hours later. I posted the same thing I posted on Instagram
Hmm.
to Twitter, and they responded with, "Hey, we totally understand your concern. A channel can be terminated without warning due to a single severe violation. For more information, click here. We're going to pass this information along and we'll update you when we have more information to share." That link that they tagged me in says, "Repeated violations of community guidelines across any form of content, such as repeated abusive, hateful comments, predatory behavior, spam, pornography, or hate speech are not allowed and will result in a immediate removal." And so I
You had none of
reposted
that.
back to them. I had none of that, right? I have
Yeah,
none of
like
that.
literally none of that. Like that doesn't
I
even
have
like again, not that you're talking about psychedelics, but that didn't even mention drugs.
exactly. And that's my thing is, and so now I'm like, okay, well, someone has to be reporting me, right?
Yeah.
That's what my mind goes to, is because if none of these things are even, if it would have said, dangerous substances,
Hmm.
that could have been mushrooms, right? Maybe it's my spore videos, maybe it's my foraging videos, but it doesn't even say that. It says all these other things. And so I responded back to them. My channel has never promoted abuse, predatory behavior, impersonations, hate speech, or anything else listed below. I woke up to my account gone without any prior strikes or violations, and I've always followed the community guidelines. They responded back 20 minutes later, "We've passed this along and we'll circle back once we have an update." And so this is an actual human, I would imagine, that's responding back, because
Yeah.
I'm getting these much more responded, and the characterization seems a little bit more personal. Whereas the YouTube appeal thing, it's just an email coming back and
Hmm.
forth. And so
So what you're saying is we're not
fingers
done yet.
crossed,
We're not
fingers
done yet.
crossed, Andrew from Mossy Creek may have found the loophole with going on X and responding to them that way. And so, if you're not already following him on Instagram or all those other platforms, definitely check out Mossy Creek Mushrooms. Thank you so much, Andrew. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Still, at least we have hope.
Yeah, I mean, that's my biggest thing is at least they told me that what the rules that I broke are something that I obviously didn't do.
Hmm.
And so hopefully if there is a human and they do have a heart and they do care, then maybe they'll reinstate the account. And I'm going to go back on there. I already bought a hard drive. I'm going to download every single video that I've ever uploaded, and I'm going to re-upload it to Patreon. I'm going to re-upload it to any other account that seems to be a reliable account for mushroom content.
Nice. So something you said really really quick that I do want to kind of ask about. Like it got me thinking. You're like, if your parents, for instance, wanted to go back and see your early
Mhm.
videos, like what was it like growing up in that very conservative Catholic family, and now being a psychedelic advocate in the state of Oklahoma?
Yeah, it has been a very long road, and delving. A lot of my friends in high school, everyone was into alcohol, and I was even drinking. I'll be honest, I was into drinking, and that was the majority of what most people were doing at the time. I'd never seen mushrooms at a party. It
Yeah.
wasn't until I gotten into college that I'd seen mushrooms, and so for majority of the time, alcohol was seemingly okay for everyone.
Hmm.
Maybe not legally, but that was the norm for a lot of the parties that I was going to. And so
That
for me
was that was the
personally,
exact same for me too. Like my I wouldn't say I grew up in like a super conservative family by any means, but it was always the family that made it seem like all drugs are bad, but that alcohol
mhm.
wasn't considered in the drug category.
Yeah, it's like, okay, just don't drink too much or you shouldn't
Hmm.
be drinking. But it's
Don't
not
drink and
like,
drive.
let me tell you, when I
Dare
got,
to resist drugs and violence.
what a perfect shirt for today, my guy. What a perfect shirt. Because do I have a story for you? So the first time I ever consumed cannabis, the first time I ever smoked was on my 18th birthday. And
Hmm.
so I took a Greyhound bus from Oklahoma City to Tucson, Arizona to visit my friend. That took 26 hours on a bus. And it was backbreaking terrible. Long story short, I get there, we go to a party, he's introducing me to all his friends. It's my 18th birthday. I decide to hop in the circle with everything being passed, all the joint being passed around. And so that was in August. And it wasn't after I left in August, I went back home I was only there for 2 weeks. I went back home, and it wasn't until about 2 to 3 months later, was it August? What is that? When's Thanksgiving? Is that November, right?
November, yeah.
Yeah. And so it wasn't until November did I find someone in Oklahoma that I could actually get some from.
Hmm.
And I remember being on Twitter at the time and hearing about Thanksgiving. So being high and going to eat all the
Hmm.
Thanksgiving food and it just being the best experience ever. So my dumb ass decided that what better way to experience Thanksgiving and than with all my family. And
Hmm.
so, typical stoner move, smokes a joint and puts 2 sprays of cologne on.
Hmm.
And I go and eat like this Thanksgiving lunch, like midday dinner with my family, and I'm sitting at one end of the table. My parents are sitting on the other, and all my family, my cousins, even my girlfriend, my brother's girlfriend, is a big extended family for Thanksgiving. And my parents just look at me and they're like, "Are you stoned right now?" And dude, when I tell you, my heart just drops. And everyone at the table just looks at me, and I just remember feeling so embarrassed and total mood killer, high,
Hmm.
totally gone, and
Yeah.
grounded, and just not. And it was like a totally different. Like if I had been caught drinking right before Thanksgiving, maybe not have been the same thing.
Yeah.
But I was the first person in my family to go off on this little journey to start consuming, to start smoking.
Hmm.
And so I definitely received the blunt force from my parents from that, and not in any physical way, but in a lot of verbal. And I definitely, I was told that I was going to be like the typical stoner that failed out of school, that didn't do anything.
So there's a lot of
And
shame and guilt that was just thrust upon you.
absolutely, absolutely. And for me, as someone I in high school, I was the class president. I was in on all the clubs, recycling clubs, soccer captain. I was totally into school. And so for me, I was just like, how does this make me different? Like,
Dude, it's
I,
it's crazy. Like crazy that like and again, I'm like no fault of your parents or anything, but like
mhm,
the way that these programs has like taught people
mhm,
about drugs is that right there. Like they genuinely believed that at the time
mhm,
that regardless of the fact that you're doing everything right, have great grades and going to
mhm.
go to college and like have done everything society's told you to do, the fact that you just smoked cannabis immediately just demotes your status all the way to the ground level.
Yeah, and so for me, it was, and some people's personalities are like this, and if you do, you'll kind of you'll feel for me. But when getting that negative stigma and being told that you can't do something because of something else that you're doing,
Hmm.
I was just like, oh, well, you watch me.
Yeah,
And I
bet.
still was an athlete, still was going to school, still getting good grades, still
Hmm.
working out, still eating healthy and breaking stigmas, right? My
Hmm.
family was just like, you're not smoking anymore. And I'm like, yes, I am. Like,
Oh, so you
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 know,
you were so like you weren't even trying to hide it. Like you were like
yeah. And
telling them
after,
like,
so
yeah, I'm fucking doing this.
after getting in trouble and being basically reamed and told that you're just not gonna make it work, right? You have to
Hmm.
choose. And I was just like, no, I think I'm gonna figure this out. And
Yeah.
I was always, although I was, people, and even like when I go to these events and stuff, I always have like a nice polo on, and people think I'm so straight lined, and they don't think I smoke, and they don't think I even eat mushrooms. And it's like, yes, I grew up in that, and I still maybe are perceived that way. But I've completely changed my personality, who I am, because of what I've learned and because of the negative stigmas that were forced upon me.
Hmm.
If it would have never been a big deal for my parents or anything like that, I probably would have never been open about it, right? I would have never been
Yeah.
as open. I started working for a CBD company because they were a weed company, and that was the closest I could get to being in the cannabis industry. So like when I started working for that, my parents were just like, you come home smelling like weed. And I remember my sweaters, my clothes, everything just it was like dank CBD flower, right? Everything
Yeah.
was just THCA, which is
Hmm.
really popular right now too. But so for a long time, my parents had this big stigma, but I was just being so open about it. And once I
Hmm.
started making money and it was legal to work for that CBD company, there was really nothing they could do
Yeah.
because like the times had changed. Before CBD was legal, no one ever talked about the benefits of cannabis
Hmm.
or anything like that, especially in this conservative Catholic community in Oklahoma City where I grew up. So it was very few and far between that people spoke about the benefits. But it wasn't until, property owners or suppliers, electricians, plumbers, and money started rolling around that
Mm-hmm.
people are like, oh yeah, the CBDs, they're
Mm-hmm.
okay. And it's like, what
Like,
are you talking about?
that's fine. That fits within the system that we have, and
Yeah. Oh
you're
yeah, one of my
able to make a
latest
living.
tenants. One of my latest tenants is a CBD farmer. And it's just like this, the same people were totally against cannabis. And, Reefer Madness and the DARE programs did a big number on our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation. And so for me, my biggest goal, even before I ever got into mushrooms, was to break stigmas and be a functional, positive cannabis consumer. And I think that that's still am what I am today. I still, rep a lot of the local cannabis companies out in Oklahoma. One of the biggest ones that I recommend is patient education through advocacy. And so by
Hmm.
being out there and really teaching people what to do and how to interact and the different cannabinoids, that has always been like the science background. That's what I've always loved. And so it's not just about consuming, but it's about knowing why we're consuming, what we're consuming, and how we can refine these processes and refine these extracts to make them the cleanest, most tasty, delicious experiences possible.
Yeah, and still natural, still fucking natural.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's my biggest gripe with like a lot of the weed that I get out here in Oklahoma, just from the dispensaries. Like, like
Hmm.
weed here is very, very readily available.
Hmm.
But like most of it is still like indoor grown, and like it just doesn't feel natural. And like when I have
Hmm.
like outdoor grown, like lower THC, it just feels a lot better to me. And I mean, that could just be my personal preference, but
Hmm.
like my relationship with cannabis is not like I'm trying to get as high as humanly possible. Like I
Hmm.
genuinely think that like I microdose cannabis like every time that I use it and smoke it. I take the smallest little hit. I take one. I'm like, perfect. I'm good. Like, I did that before I started recording. Like that's all I need.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie either. I have a Puffco, and I have some nice hash from some Burley Botanicals out in Oklahoma. And, for me personally, cannabis, and this is kind of a side tangent, but, growing up in a family where cannabis wasn't common and then going to using it, my parents are always like, do you have to be high when you're around us? Why do you have to be high when you're around us? Or,
Hmm.
what do you get from being high? And all these questions, right? And they weigh down, they weigh heavy. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I was able to communicate that they helped me to reframe my thoughts in a way that people turn and twist a Rubik's Cube.
Hmm.
And so with anxiety and depression, it can weigh really heavy on the mental. And when you're able to consume, whether it's through an electronic device or through papers or whatever, through glass, for me personally, the way the endocannabinoids work with my system, or the cannabinoids work with my endocannabinoid system, it really helps me to relax and to reframe my mental thoughts. And so I wouldn't say it puts me in that stoned state where I can't think or do anything, but it
Hmm.
puts me in this position where I'm allowed to think about things almost more functionally without feeling the overall stress of the situation.
Yeah.
And so that's
No,
all,
no.
that's honestly what a lot of people compare mushrooms to. And I experienced this very early on with cannabis. And so with my parents always asking me that, I would always tell them, this is helping me with anxiety. This is helping me with a lot of the stresses of class. I also have a lot of back pain, nerve pain in my lower back. And so
Hmm.
consuming RSO has really helped me to relax the body and to help go to sleep. And so for me, consuming cannabis, figuring out it all started with I enjoyed the experience. And then I wanted
Yeah.
to figure out with why I enjoyed the experience. And
Hmm.
then I wanted to enjoy the experience on Thanksgiving. And then I was told I should not enjoy a Thanksgiving. So
Yeah.
I decided to start working for a company that would teach me how to do everything I was consuming. And then from one thing led to another. And now today, my parents, not only are they embrace what I do now because they see my love and passion, but I can talk to my parents about CBD, CBN, CBG,
Yeah.
THC, all these different cannabinoids, and I can talk to them about all the different compounds in mushrooms, psilocin, psilocybin, aruginacin, all these compounds, and they're not afraid of them. But what they are is they're accustomed to hearing me talk about them in a positive aspect.
Yeah.
right? When growing up, all they ever heard were mushrooms and cannabis talked about in negative ways. And
Hmm.
so to see their son grow up and to be able to talk about these compounds and to be able to help people and to see the positive benefits, I think has really helped them to relax. And they don't consume mushrooms, they don't really consume cannabis, but what they do, they're receptive to people that do consume, and they're more appreciative of why, because they understand the benefits instead of 10
So that
years
like
ago.
immediate rush to judgment is not there the way that it used to be.
I mean, and here's a perfect example. If you were at my Oklahoma Mushroom Festival, if you were at the Oklahoma Fungi booth, my parents, my mom, my dad, my grandma, my grandpa, my wife, and all my siblings, I had like everyone there as a team selling T-shirts, selling gummies. My whole family was there, and
That's
I had
awesome.
so many people come up and say, "Is that really your mom? Is that really your grandma? Is that really your sister?" And so many people were telling me, I just can't believe your family's here. And
Hmm.
that on that day, on National Mushroom Day of last year, October 15th, it really hit me how much my family has come around from being judged on Thanksgiving to having one of the best days ever and having my family support me and not just, say, oh yeah, my son's doing a festival, but actually showing up, helping me set up, helping me sell, and helping me orient all the attendees and then
Hmm.
helping me close down. I mean, man, that's such a blessing.
So the community in Oklahoma now, obviously it's a lot bigger than when you got started, but I'm curious, like even at the Oklahoma Mushroom Festival, did you still kind of get the vibe that there were some people there that almost like, I don't want people to know that I'm here?
I would say that there were a lot of people from out of state who came with the intentions of being very publicly recognized.
Hmm.
People like from Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, California with nice online platforms or recognition. They came to Oklahoma and they were very well received. Now, there were some people in Oklahoma who, were kind of not anticipating it being such a big event and also just not anticipating the mushroom scene moving along this quickly. I think
Hmm.
that the event really helped to propel a lot of companies into new markets. I mean, Oklahoma, with us having medical cannabis, there's a lot of untapped areas, whether it's dispensaries or processors or growers that are very interested in mushrooms. And so I think this event kind of helps to spark the community to really get involved. And we had over 12 different states represented at our event. So we had different companies from 12 different states come. We had 65 vendors total. And I would say that 75% of them were local. And so I'm not sure what that exact number is, but for a majority, at least that's around, I think, was that 15 to 18 people. For a
Somewhere around there.
majority of yeah, for majority of our vendors, they were very ecstatic to see the local mushroom community, not the vendors or the sponsors, but just the people,
Hmm.
and come out and interact. And so it was the first time that there had ever been an in-person mushroom event at this scale in Oklahoma. And so there was people driving from all over the country, coming from all over, whether it was to attend or vend, and so a lot of the vendors who came from out of state were really surprised with how loving and interested the community was. We had people from all different backgrounds, demographics, being interested. What is a mushroom? Where do mushroom spores come from? How are mushroom spores legal? And
Hmm.
how is Inoculate the World giving out so many syringes?
How
And
is
so,
this allowed?
exactly. And I had these questions, and the best thing and the best thing about it is, and what I've always done is I've been very open and upfront about the purpose of Oklahoma Fungi, and that is to spread mushroom education in Oklahoma and abroad. And so by bringing people from out of state to get here to see what we have going on and to bring our local community there to see what the greater community outside of Oklahoma is doing, I think everyone was ecstatic and maybe even a bit overwhelmed with how much buzz was going around with mushrooms that day.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. I mean, that's really fucking cool that you did that. Like truly. Um,
Thank you. I
so
appreciate it, man. I've gotten a lot of love for hosting the event. I met a lot of people at Entheogen Expo that donated to the event. Agar Boy, the host, and Miss Mush, the hosts of Entheogen Expo, donated to our event. So it was so incredible to get to come back out to San Diego, or to get to come to San Diego and show them love, to be able to donate to their event and to get to meet some people. And I have some details for the next upcoming Oklahoma Mushroom Festival, and that is the 12th and 13th of October in Oklahoma City. The venue is to be determined. I still got to let the ink dry on the paperwork before I release all the details, but it is coming. It's a 2-day event and it's going to be epic. So if you're listening,
2 days
definitely,
now. Okay.
yes, we're going to turn it into 2 days. We're going to have 2 mushroom stages and 1 workshop. So we're going to really push the mushroom education this time. And really, last year we had 18 educators. This year we're going to try and double that number and try and get a lot more education and a lot more workshops available for people to come and do more hands-on interaction learning.
Hell yeah, man. That's amazing. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
One
You
last
even have a little,
question.
you have
Yeah,
a little
sorry.
much love bag.
I do. I hung it there. The problem is like you can't see it once I edit these videos, unfortunately, because we're both going to be in squares, but you can see it, and that's all that matters.
Love it. I appreciate it. Thank you so
um,
much.
my very last question to you before we get going here is on the Thanksgiving directly after the one where you got caught smoking weed. Did you show up high?
Yes. Hey, I had to run it back. I had to run it back. Oh my God. But so the better part though is I'm a responsible older brother.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a younger brother who turned 18 in January that year.
Uh
And so it was on his 18th birthday that I showed him how to smoke.
huh.
And and it was from then on that we both got to go to a Thanksgiving celebration. So I
I love
always
it.
have so much love and respect for my brother, for to him to be on the journey with me through Thanksgiving and then to find mushroom videos together. It's been such an amazing journey with him.
That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you sharing. Before we go, where can people find you to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so you can definitely find me on Instagram. That is the most reliable, most popular platform, at Oklahoma Fungi or at Oklahoma Fungi, whichever way you pronounce it. This is the logo and sticker and that you'll always see. Nice little cute mushroom, a little Amanita muscaria, and you can also see it on my hoodie here. And if you want to check me out on Patreon, it is patreon.com/ Oklahoma Fungi. That is where I have to upload all my content as of right now because YouTube is being a little bit difficult and they are not realizing that I'm a legal mushroom educator. And
hmm
so fingers crossed they reinstate me. After that, you'll be able to find all my content back on YouTube. You can also find me on TikTok. You can also find me on YouTube Shorts, all those other different small platforms that are coming up. I'm thinking about starting a Rumble. So if I do start one, it'll be at Oklahoma Fungi. And you can always visit my website, oklahomafungi.com, and sign up for that newsletter. I send out monthly emails about events that I go to, like the past 2 that I just went to, and also about upcoming education classes or videos that I post. If you order products online, you also get mushroom stickers. And I would say this, if you haven't heard about what I do in Oklahoma, the most notable thing that I've ever done, most likely that you've heard of, hopefully, is the Oklahoma wild Psilocybe cubensis genetics. 2 years ago, I found those out in a horse manure patty. I was able to collect some spores and have now redistributed the spores throughout the United States to friends. I just donated a bunch to the Entheogen Expo and passed some around to everyone that I met. So if you're interested in landrace varieties, you want to see something cool from Oklahoma, check out my page, check out my website. We have the Oklahoma Wild footlongs, and that's because they grow a foot long tall. So check them out.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, well, thank you, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your energy. I appreciate like you really do bring so much love into this space. And it's been exciting following you, and I'm excited to hopefully be able to meet in the 3D. Definitely at the next Oklahoma Fungi Festival. But if you're ever in Colorado, you let me know, man. Well, we've made it to the end. Thank you, everybody, for joining me on this beautiful journey. Thank you, Jacob, for being your incredible, authentic, beautiful self. I appreciate it. I'm honored that you came on the podcast, and I look forward to continuing to follow your work and be a part of it in whatever way that I can. That's it for this week. If you want to get in contact with me for sponsorships, or if you just want to talk, feel free to DM me or shoot me an email at tripsittingblog@gmail.com. That's all I got. I love you.